Hi everyone, my name's Trudie, I'm a member of the IQ Bar team and I'm also one of the vloggers. This week's vlog is all about assessment, the big A word. This is a two-part vlog. If you want to find out more about AfL and how to use it in our lessons here at IQ Bar, check out Mark's vlog. In vlog 1, I'll be discussing where AfL comes from, breaking down what it actually is, discussing how it links to formative and summative assessment and what they actually mean, and looking at the benefits by covering some theory related to this and the main processes of AfL. In vlog 2, I'll be covering the main principles and how they benefit the student, general misconceptions and benefits, as well as some activity ideas or ways you could integrate AfL into the online classroom. So where did it come from? AfL originates in the research of UK professors Paul Black and Dylan William. They understand how classroom processes can be complicated, but they wanted to know what was happening inside. They found that students who learn in a formative way achieve much more and get better results. They describe the classroom as this black box because we kind of don't know what goes on inside it. So they published their findings in an aptly named booklet for practitioners that they named Inside the Black Box, Raising Standards Through Classroom Assessment. This is really worth a read, so check it out. In this booklet, it showed that assessment for learning is at the head of effective teaching. It showed that it also has a strong positive effect on achievement and that it raises standards. AfL is now recognised as one of the most powerful ways to improve learning and to raise standards, with more and more evidence coming to support this. What actually is it? AfL stands for Assessment for Learning. AfL probably won't be new to any of you who have worked in any mainstream education, but for many of us online teachers, it's a bit less familiar and at times can seem like a really daunting approach to use in the online classroom. But I promise you, it's not. People hear the word assessment and initially think back to school days and think when you're sat in the exam hall or told not to talk for the next hour. Don't get tied up in that. Assessment for learning occurs at all stages of the learning process. But still, what actually is it? It's an approach used to give feedback on a student's performance so that they can make improvements. You may often hear it referred to as formative assessment, which basically means that it's our job as buddies to collect and interpret evidence which we use to help our learners to use to develop their own learning and to find out how best to get them to where they need to be. With AfL, responsibility is put on the learner. It's believed that AfL encourages more confidence in students as it gets them involved in their learning and they have a much clearer understanding of what area they need to improve in. It encourages learning and promotes motivation because the emphasis is on progress and achievement rather than failure. Some have even identified this approach to learning as an opportunity for students to close the gap between where they currently are and where they're aiming to be. This is where we come in. As skilled online teachers and buddies, we have to guide the students to complete AfL successfully. As stated in our teacher standards, we should be integrating AfL into our lesson plans, and this can be adapted depending on the age and the ability of our buddy. There's lots of research that suggests that AfL strategies result in students improving in summative tests and examinations, particularly for those low achieving students. Formative and summative assessment with AfL. Let's find out a little bit more about them. AfL is often closely linked to formative assessments, as the questions we ask our buddies help provide feedback on our buddies' understanding, and then from this we can adapt our plans. So formative means that it's ongoing throughout. But AfL is also summative assessment, and summative assessment focuses on measuring student attainment at the end of a period of learning, like our little assessments that we do after a unit. That's why, after an assessment, we decide if the buddy needs more time on an area, or will identify areas of particular strength, and those areas that they need to develop, which is why our assessments are so important. but equally why our reviews are also just as important. Let's delve into a little bit of theory. John Hattie says that AfL helps to make understanding and knowledge more visible. In fact, he actually listed feedback strategies as number 10 in 150 factors that bring improvements in learner outcomes. AfL helps students to feel in control, which means that they understand the effort that they make or how interested they are will affect the final outcome, although they do know that there will be uncontrollable factors. So for students who take part in self-assessment, and they would understand that if they did a work that was quite poor, wasn't up to standard, that this might be because they focused on the wrong subject. They can then review, edit, and improve their work. Metacognition, which basically means thinking about thinking. This supports AfL, particularly self-assessment. With this, it's all about giving students opportunities to build on their previous knowledge and experiences. There's research that proves that just telling students what they need to know is much less effective than helping them construct the meaning for themselves. We're going to take a look at the main processes in AfL and some key principles. Number 1, questioning. With our help, they can find out what level they are at. We can identify and correct misunderstandings and find any gaps, and use this information for future lessons and activities, which is why questions are so important. And not just questions where they answer yes and no. Open-ended questions enable us to provide more information to them. You can find out more about age and level appropriate questions in my previous blog, which is called Age Appropriate Content. Number 2, feedback. We give our students areas to work on, like in our lesson reviews, but it has to be specific, which is why we're so heavy on having SMART targets. It's no good just saying practice reading. What can they practice? Give them an example, give them a piece of text. How often should they be doing it? This will help them to identify the gaps in their knowledge and understand exactly how to close it. Number 3, the student has to understand what successful looks like. That's why when we set the homework, we make sure you don't rush it. It's important you explain what good is going to look like by telling them what they need to do so it's clear to them. Then the next lesson, when you begin it and you check their homework, it's a really good way of assessing them from the beginning of the session. Number 4, students become more independent in their learning, which means they can start to self-assess. And I'll share some ways that you can use self-assessment in my second blog. Number 5, summative. These are used to help and identify improvements that still need to be made. Remember, you can look out for part 2, which will be coming soon. Happy teaching, guys. Bye.